Антон Грищенко, руководитель первой
My
линии
name
SOC
is
Red Security.
Anton Grishenko. I'm the head of line 1 at SOC with Red Security. My name is Nazar. I'm the leading analyst of line 1 of the same SOC. I'll start and then the colleague will pick up.
С определения SSH, исходя из английского, это secure shell, безопасная оболочка,
According to
которая позволяет
the definition, SSH is the secure shell. That's a technology that allows to safely get connected to to hosts and manage the data
передаются в
stored
зашифрованном
there.
виде.
And the particularity of the technology is that all the data is transferred in a safe way. It uses the 22nd port and it is used widely.
Назар, повыше микрофон.
Почему вообще выбрана тема SSH-туннелирования?
Why we picked this topic? Why we decided to talk about SSH tunneling? It is used by administrators. It's a useful tool, but if a bad actor uses it, it can be a powerful weapon. They use tunneling for several purposes. The main one is to bypass network restrictions and to get into the safe perimeter. Then they use it to obfuscate traffic and anonymize their actions. That makes it difficult to detect incidents. Then they create reverse tunnels. And of course, they also can use these tunnels to transfer malware, malicious tools. For the protecting team, they need to understand how these tunnels may be used. They need to be able to detect these tunnels in their operation system, because at the level of traffic, as traffic is encrypted, it's difficult to do that. And of course, to need to be able to detect and isolate the initiator of this activity.
Туннелирование — это, по сути, использование SSH как прокси.
Tunneling is using SSH as proxy. There are three main types of tunnels: a local one, a remote one, and a dynamic one. First, let's take the local one. Local rerouting of ports is a way to create a protected channel. When traffic is sent to a specific port of a local machine, and it is rerouted through SSH to the identified server. So here you see the intruder who initially doesn't have access to the target host, but it can use the intermediate host that is linked to the target host. And by creating a tunnel, the bad actor can get the access to the target machine. So here he used port 9999, and then it is the traffic is rerouted to the target port 5432. The next tunnel is a remote tunnel. Here, a port of a remote server is used, and the traffic goes through that port to reach the target machine. So the intermediary host has a port, and that port is opened to reroute through it the traffic to the target host. And again, the in-reach port is 9999, and through the tunnel, the traffic goes to the target host. And in this way, the bad actor can get additional access to the infrastructure and act there. And the third type of the tunnel is a dynamic tunnel, the most flexible type of a tunnel. Here, at a local machine, a port is activated. It acts as a SOCKS proxy server, and it is used to attack the infrastructure. The previous two types of tunnels were linked with the target host, but here you can access the whole infrastructure from the intermediary host. And actually, these tunnels leave very few artifacts that you can use during your investigation. How can we detect these tunnels? Every Linux server has an SSHD
Он генерирует два основных
daemon that
для открытия
supports all the SSH sessions, and it generates bind
названия
and connect,
подключения к целевому
which
хосту.
is called to get connected to the target host. These calls with high probability signal creation of a tunnel, and it's enough to just log these actions with the audit D. If you use this approach,
Необходимость анализа сетевого трафика.
you will not have to analyze the network traffic.
Поподробнее
A few words about each call. Syscall bind.
на слайде
That opens a port for
а именно самые интересные для нас поля.
scanning.
Нам в первую очередь будет интересно, какой
And here there are interesting
интерфейс.
panes. During investigation, it's interesting to see which port was opened.
В сессию какого пользователя это
Then you look at the interface and at the
пользователя.
user that was used. And looking at the session, you can see what was the authentication method.
Хосту прокидывается доступ, куда идет коннект.
Syscall connect.
В событии тоже
You
есть.
also need to see what port the connect was going to, and then you analyze the user and the port. And now I'm
Какие события нам нужны для решения?
handing it over to the colleague.
Нужно настроить сбор
To
соответствующих
see what events you need to look, you need to first collect the events. And here you can see the config of audit
вызовы bind и connect.
EN that collects bind and connect calls. Linux systems
Bind события и
open bind and connect events at its local host. These events are of no interest to us because they are not related to the network connection to other hosts. What we need is A2 parameter, the
мы можем ограничить события.
length of the structure. Using this parameter, we can limit the events to those who are actually related to IPv4
Строю сбор необходимых
or
событий,
IPv6.
созданию детектирующего
After setting that,
на слайде на левом
you create the detecting logics.
справа, как это реализовано.
You have the examples of sigma rule and kuma rule here. The logics is actually simple. We look for system calls for connector bind from SSHD. That's the basics, and then a few details. First, you need the command line to have the SSH subline. Without that, we will be responding to legitimate, regular SSH connections, which are not actually related to the tunnels, whereas the tunnels will be leaving traces at SSHD line in command line.
Пускать правила в бой, необходимо его отпрофилировать.
Before firing the rule, you need to profile it.
В логике у нас было
Based on the logics I've just presented, we had approximately 300 activations of SSHD, and then we brought it down to 4. I'll tell you how.
плодит огромное
What I
количество
recommend is that if you have a lot of false positives for a rule, if you have a very interesting rule but it has a lot of
если в
activations, don't use it. Don't implement it,
такая технология
because if you, in the company where you're going to do that, SSH tunneling is
появляются новые и новые,
used,
никогда не закончится.
you will get new and new ports
С дежурными первой линии,
appearing.
когда правило
And then what happens to the frontliners when the rule is activated all the time, even if you have the real alert, no one will pay attention to that, not a person on duty and not even the person responsible from the client's side. But if you still decide to monitor these abnormalities, you need to profile it.
об активных
Then
подключениях.
you go to SSH
Это не определено.
line,
И далее наша боль — это X-сервер.
we exclude
Фактически обмен изображением происходит в рамках туннеля,
The,
то есть туннель поднимается. И
this
просто
part, and the tunnel
указанных диапазонов — это плохой
is created. You shouldn't just exclude all the ports from this range. You need to really be very specific about excluding specific ports and hosts. If you can't profile it as that, then you exclude the whole range.
Начнем составлять плейбук для аналитиков. Что ему делать, когда он зафиксировал?
Playbook for analysts.
Представлена базовая
When you have an alert, what do? Here you can see the basic events
воспроизведение
of a
тестовой лаборатории.
penetration tester's activity. The key
В 146
aspects here is that we see an event
выполнил
with a
на порт HTTP
DVX address.
249 хоста.
You see
SSHD обращается на
that
HTTP порт.
this SSHD was addressing a specific
Обратить внимание на номер сессии.
SSH port.
440.
The person on duty should look at the number of the session. At the
Был выполнен вход на
lower screenshot, you see how that host was accessed, and that shows you the source host. That's host
смотрим с него
253. Then you look the events of this host, if it's been monitored, and it was monitored, and what the red team did, they created a local tunnel at their
назывался.
host, at their hacker's host, but of course it had a different name.
Получить прямой
And then within their tunnel, they wanted to get a direct access to the target host. And in order to do that, they created a local tunnel, and now accessing port 9999 of their hacker's host through a tunnel and the proxy server, they were directly accessing their target host. In a similar way, the connect can be established via a dynamic tunnel. And we continuously see that facing real-life attacks. What's the problem there? They can only be detected only thanks to our rules, because we will never learn what bad actors did, because their hosts are not monitored. And from our last case, we saw many connect calls to many ports and hosts, and it's obvious that they were scanning. Here you can see proxy chain, proxy server, and act without leaving any artifacts. But you can use that rule to catch the bad actor.
Про бинт расследование будет начинаться аналогичным
With
образом.
bint, investigation starts in a similar way. We look at ID of sessions, and here we see that the port is open for scanning, and then we look at how the host that registered that event was accessed. Then we can look at the events of the source host and see what the bad actor did. In this case,
Подключение было с хоста
the
target.
connection
Что здесь важно?
was from the target host, and what's important here is that with the local tunnel, the tunnel was created from the hacker's
Произошло с хоста target.
host.
В нашем случае
And here,
писали в задачнике Linux cron. Что они
our
сделали?
pen testers created
Была прописана команда,
cron in Linux. So there was a command that you can see on the screenshot, and regularly this command was creating a remote tunnel. So from any host that has access to this proxy server could use this command at any time, from any point, through this remote tunnel. They could access to the service that was their target through that port.
Спасибо. Про хардеринг. На
Okay,
слайде представлена
thank you. A
конфигурация.
few words about hardening. Here you can see the SSHD
Сразу идти.
configuration.
Указанное
That's
положение,
the
параметр no.
ultimate solution. Probably you shouldn't do that right at once. First, you need to study the situation and ask the colleagues who use that host whether that will disrupt their processes. And from my experience, I can recommend that
Это делать небезопасно.
you need to have security standards, because if you just say that that's unsafe, that's not an argument.
Которые запрещают аннулировать.
Here on the slide you can the screenshots of the rule and how you can formulate it, and that standard can be used. It is specific. Dear colleagues, thank you. I'm ready to take your questions.